Scouts Victoria respectfully acknowledges the traditional custodians of the country throughout Victoria where our activities take place today. We pay our respects to elders both past, present and emerging, and continue to recognise and embrace the important continuous history and connection to land and community of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders people.
Welcome to Scouts Quest. I'm Jacob from 1st 2nd Greensborough. Tonight we have Xavier from Wildlife Exposure who will take us on a marine adventure. If you have any questions throughout tonight's presentation, please pop them in the chat and we will get to as many as possible after our encounter. I'd now like to welcome Xavier. Hi Xavier, how are you? Ready to get started?
G'day Jacob. Yes, thanks for having me on, everybody. Jacob, thanks for introducing me there. Good to be with you. Great. So I'm actually out next to my marine tank at the moment and it's quite cold, so I've got my beanie on. I've got my glove because I cut my finger and I'm going to be going in and out of the salt water, so just so I don't make it any worse than what it already is, if you're wondering. Great. So marine creatures, like Jacob said, so I mean, we all love going to the beach, although this time of year it's a bit chilly. Although here in Victoria, we have some of the most marine diverse environments than anywhere else in Australia. So it's often not recognised, but we have more marine biodiversity here in Port Phillip Bay and around Melbourne than on the Great Barrier Reef. So that basically means we have a wider variety of different living things. So we don't just have corals and masses of fish, but we have seaweeds and soft sponges and ascidians and fish and a whole raft of diversity, different types of living creatures. So I've only got a small selection today to show you. All the animals I have here with me, I'm licensed by fisheries to collect and then keep in my marine aquariums so that I can use them for the purpose of education. And they're all locally found. So I go out myself, snorkeling, diving and collect these creatures myself. And it's always a really enjoyable thing to do, although this time of the year it's freezing cold. So it was fun to go exploring and find a few things for you for this Zoom and for our other classes we're running. But obviously when I'm in the water, I need things to help me. So we all know we're not adapted to moving around in the water. We're terrestrial creatures. So if you want to go in the water, we use things to help us, like I have here a pair of flippers, right? So the flippers simply just go on my hands when I want to go swimming. Yeah, no, I'm messing around, okay, I'm being silly. But they go on my feet and I can swim quickly like a fish. Basically, divers call them fins because they are just like fish fins in the way they work. Moving water quickly, you can swim quickly. Obviously. Now also, we can't see in the water properly. Our eyes are adapted for seeing here on dry land. So to see underwater, we need to wear a mask. So goggles we know we use in the pool, they're great, but a mask is a little different for divers. The mask will block your nose as well, so no water goes up your nose when you're using one of these. So you're probably familiar as well with this is a snorkel. So the snorkel just goes in my mouth and allows me to breathe air on the surface while my face is in the water still, looking at the animals that live there. So these are great inventions. People have obviously explored deeper parts of the sea by using a scuba tank and other means as well, submersibles, submarines and such, but you know, I don't have any of that fancy stuff. I've got a scuba tank I do use when I go to the bottom. I find it a lot easier when I'm crawling along the bottom, but obviously when the air runs out, I have to go back to the surface, have a rest, because we're not evolved and adapted to stay underwater for long periods of time. So I always have to be careful of that too. But look, the first creature I'll show you now is an animal that's really simple, really basic creature, and it's some of the first animals that have lived on Earth. So these fossils of these animals way back, way before dinosaurs. This creature, you're going to guess what it is as soon as I hold it up. So if you're here watching, just shout it out at the screen. Everyone will wonder what you're doing, but you can tell them I'm shouting at Xavier. He's asked me to tell you what this animal is, so you'll know. There's a couple here you can kind of see already. You can probably guess. You're saying starfish? Yeah, well, you're close. Not a fish, okay? I mean, I call them starfish myself, but they're not a fish. In fact, they're a sea star, right? So the reason we call them a sea star now is because unlike a fish, they have no bones in their body, no eyes, no tail, they don't swim around, so they're not really a fish. This animal is an invertebrate, so no bones inside at all, has a hard plate-like skeleton. You could call it a skeleton. It's more like skin. They've got really tough skin. So a sea star is an animal with tough skin, and that tough skin prevents them from being eaten. So if an animal was to try and eat a sea star, they'd break their teeth. Okay, so really tough. Not many animals eat them. They're not edible, really. And this is a biscuit star because it looks a bit like, a biscuit. Okay, we talked about it, don't eat it. So beautiful patterns of biscuit stars. There's a few different types I have here. Different patterns, different colours. I've got my screen in reverse here, so it's confusing me. But yeah, beautiful creatures, really up close. And people often say, they're not alive, Zach. They're not doing anything. They don't do a lot, but trust me, they are definitely alive. They spend their time on the bottom of the sea. They're benthic meaning bottom. They live at the bottom and just move around the bottom, eating leftovers and whatever they find. And it's interesting how they eat. We'll talk more about it. But a few other species I want to show you I've got in here. So these are all southern waters. There's one climbing out of the tank, so I'm just going to grab him straight away here. It's stuck too. It's really stuck to the side of this tank with its feet. This is a big one. This is the largest we have in our southern waters here in Port Phillip Bay. This is called a many-arm sea star or an 11-arm sea star. Now, it was stuck, I mentioned, with these little wriggling bits underneath called its tube feet. So imagine not having 2 feet, but thousands of feet. You can see them moving a little. Thousands of little feet that are able to suck on and stick onto surfaces so they don't get washed away by strong currents and tides and things when they're moving around the bottom. It's really quite lively at the minute. Look at that. Thousands of tube. They grow back too. So if their tube feet break off, they grow them back. And you probably know they can do that with their arms too. Sea stars are pretty famous for that. They can regenerate and grow new arms. They can even segmentate, which means they can break into segments or parts. So if it breaks in half, an animal breaks it in half or it gets attacked, it can actually turn into 2 sea stars, 3 or 4 or 5 or 6. As long as there's a part of the central radius that goes with it, it will grow a whole new sea star. It's crazy, isn't it? Imagine that, you're getting lonely, you throw your arm over there in lockdown, you've got no one to hang out with, and you grow a new person. Crazy to think about. There's enough people in the world already, isn't there, really? So don't want to go there, but amazing. These creatures, they're so simple, but so amazing. And how they eat is really interesting too. They don't have a mouth to put food in. They can't really fit food in their mouth. So instead, they regurgitate their stomach acids. Their stomach, comes out of their body, spewing it out of the central part here, and it goes all over their food, then melting their food externally. They'll then suck their stomach back inside once they've dissolved their food. It's terrible table manners, but it works really well for these animals when they can't get an animal out of a shell, like a snail, a crab, or something wants to eat. You can't get them out, so instead of putting its stomach in, dissolves them in the shell, slurps them out. In fact, this many-armed sea star is a specialist in eating animals like sea snails and other mollusks such as bivalves, which are 2-shelled animals like mussels. They love mussels. So Port Arlington's an area in Port Phillip Bay where these are a bit of a problem, actually, for mussel farmers. If you're a mussel farmer, then many-armed sea star is an animal you're trying to avoid eating your mussels. But what a cool creature. It's really quite lively with these tube feet at the minute. Really tough on top, though, as I mentioned, really tough, spiky skin. So a sea star is what we call an echinoderm. That's a scientific term for an animal with tough skin. So echino, think of echidna. Echino means spiky, derm means skin. If you're an echinoderm, you've got spiky skin, right? Now, there's another species here I want to quickly show you too. This one is actually called a Northern Pacific sea star, and this is actually an introduced pest. So you hear about introduced species, such as the rabbit and the fox. We hear about those a lot. Well, this is one from Asian waters, came here on the ballast water of ships. So the ships that come into our bay delivering our goods have brought water with them to balance the ships out. And these are hitchhikers. They've jumped off the ships into Port Phillip Bay, and now they're actually a real big problem in the bay. So at certain times of the year, certain periods in history, they've actually wiped out huge populations of our native marine life, such as seaweeds and other native animals, because these little sea stars are really tough critters. So you've got to admire them, but unfortunately in our Port Phillip Bay environment, they don't go so well with the other native animals. So this is the Northern Pacific, and they do encourage you, if you see these at the beach, to collect them actually out of the water and put them in the bin. Sounds a bit tragic for a sea star, but unfortunately it's the only way to try and reduce the numbers. And at times of the year, divers go out in big groups and they actually collect as many as they can to try and reduce the impact that they're having. So the Northern Pacific sea star, it's identifiable by having the 5 points. It's always this yellowy colour with some sort of purples on it. Even if you can make it out, it's got a bit of a purpley tip there. Some can have more purple through the body, but they're always generally that shape and colour. Now, There are others as well. A Zigzag Star I've got here, lots of sea stars. This one's growing its arm back. You can see there, okay? So it's growing a new arm. And the Zigzag Star has slight zigzag patterns on its body. I don't know if you can make them out at all, but in their tough skin, they've got this slight zigzag pattern. If you ever spot one, you have a closer look, you might make it out. But yeah, there's a little baby arm growing back. Pretty cool to see. Now, look at it. Oh, one more. I've got another one here. They're real common you might find around the Williamstown area, and I find them quite commonly. This is a Gunn's 6-arm star. Where are its arms? You can see the points. They are, in fact, its arms. If I turn it over, you're going to see underneath these lines, that's each arm, and they're the tube feet. And you can also see a bit of the stomach there. I've just noticed that. Can you see that blobby bit in the middle? A bit of its stomach is actually spewed out at the minute, so it must be trying to dissolve something in the tank here. But that's its stomach acids there we talked about. Ugh. Cool. So sea stars are an echinoderm. Tough-bodied, spiky-skinned animal. A lot like this next one I'm going to show you. In fact, they're related. So this is another type of echinoderm, and this one's called a sea urchin. Quite familiar with these. They come in different colours. Again, you can get them almost white and pink colour. This is probably the most common, the darker kind of purple colour. But a sea urchin has these spikes again to protect it. You wouldn't want to eat one. Most animals don't, although some animals have specialised in eating them. I know sea otters in other parts of the world have specialised in specialists in eating these. Also some birds obviously can dive down like cormorants and pick them off the rocks, cracking them open because there are soft parts inside. They get through that hard armoured defence. Inside is like this slimy, gooey eggs, in fact, and people eat them as well. So they're real popular in New Zealand. They call them echina, and they're a popular delicacy in a lot of other countries too. I tried it when I was camping. It wasn't my cup of tea, but it's good to try things. And I've been told different times of the year they could taste better than others. But when I had it, it just tasted like salty slime, in my opinion. But sea urchins, cool creature. Now these spikes, I don't know, hold it still enough. You might see them moving a bit. Now, they do move eventually, but they'll move to help them crawl along the bottom of the sea. They'll even use those spikes to catch food as it floats past. So those spikes, they can even manipulate to grab onto things like chopsticks, imagine that, and they pass the food through these spikes to their mouth, which is on the bottom. You can see that dot there, that's its mouth. Now they don't spew their stomach acids out, no, they actually have a small sharp beak that they can go along the bottom or across rocks and actually shave off their food, which could be anything they come across, but they do love seaweeds. They love kelp. And in fact, in Port Phillip Bay, the sea urchins, although they are native to the area, if other predators are removed, their populations go up. And if there's too many sea urchins in an area, what can happen is they can wipe out kelp forests. So kelp forests are the brown algae that grows, large kelp, one of their favourite things to eat. So unfortunately, in some parts of Port Phillip Bay where there's been a lot of fishing, things like snapper and shark have been removed that do eat sea urchins at times. They've got big mouths to sort of crush up the spikes. When there's less predators eating these sea urchins, their numbers have increased and caused large areas of kelp forest to be decimated. However, when they do get eaten or their population reduces again, that seaweed can come back. So it has happened. But they're really common in Port Phillip Bay, the sea urchin. Now, they've got no eyes, but they have senses. A lot like a sea star in a lot of ways. Their senses are covering their body, so they can sense light and dark. They cannot see pictures like we can, but they know when it's daytime or nighttime, basically, so they can come out and move around when they feel safe in the dark, or they know when they're hiding underneath a rock or somewhere like that, or in some seaweed. So light sensitive, basically. There's that mouth again on the bottom. Cool. I've got another little one in here as well. So obviously they can get bigger than this, but they can also be smaller. There you go, little baby one. It's a bit smaller there. Long spikes on that one. And their mouth is on the bottom we talked about there, but the bottom is on the top. So like a sea star, if you didn't know it, if I didn't mention it before, but while the mouth's on the bottom, bottom's on top. Okay, so a bit topsy-turvy down in the under the sea. Things are a little different to on land, but yeah, they've got their bottom right up there on the top. All right, that's just how it is. Interesting, right? You can't really see it. It's a tiny little dot in the middle. You might make it out, but that's its bottom. If you wanted to look at a sea urchin's bottom, there you go. But we've got more to look at, so I'll keep moving along through things. But echinoderms, while we're still talking about those, I have another type here. And this is probably the weirdest animal I'm going to show you today. It is bizarre, this creature. And you might know what it is. Again, just shout it out, join in there. You're watching at home. And if you know what this animal is, be careful what you say, because it's a strange-looking animal. Check it out. What do you think that looks like? That is an animal. It is, okay? And yes, you're probably thinking it looks like something you find on the nature strip. No, okay? It's a sea cucumber. If you said that, you're right. A sea cucumber. What a cool one. These are a little big one, this one. And the sea cucumber is an animal. All right? This is a living creature. It's, again, a very simple creature, but it has a really important job. This animal is a filter feeder. If you imagine it sits at the bottom of the sea, sucks in water, and in that water are microorganisms, teeny, tiny little animals we can't see, little proteins and things in the water like fish poo and wee. You can't really see it, but it's there, and this animal will eat up all that nutrients and then whoosh, squirt brand new. Oh, there it goes. I don't want to squirt my computer. You see the water coming out? That water is clean seawater. So this animal cleans the ocean. Without filter feeders, the ocean wouldn't be clean. Simply, animals and the balanced ecosystem is what keeps the ocean clean. And in Port Phillip Bay, I was told by a marine biologist that all the water through Port Phillip Bay is estimated to go through a filter feeder of some type twice a day. If you know big Port Phillip Bay, it's a big body of water. So all that water has to go through a filter feeder twice a day. It's crazy, because it's not just the cucumbers that are filter feeders. We know coral, not a plant, but coral is built by animals to filter the water, the same as sponges. And I did mention here in Port Phillip Bay, around our Victorian coastline, we have a lot of sponges. So, yeah, sponges are filter feeders. This one I washed up on the beach, cool fan sponge. You get different types of sponges too. This is a wine glass sponge, okay? Looks a bit like a wine glass. That's where it gets its name. You can sort of see it's a bit hollow in there. It's become a bit squished as I've transported it around. But yeah, sponges built by animals, same as coral. And the animals that build them, teeny, tiny little creatures would have lived in these tiny little holes in the sponge. They're called polyps, the little creatures that build these. So it's like they're building. It's like a city for these tiny creatures to catch the food in the water in the same way that the sea cucumber filters water. Now, it's an echinoderm. Although it's not really spiky, it kind of looks bumpy and lumpy. It is tough. It's got tough rubbery skin, okay? Tough in the same way the sea urchin, sea star, has that tough skin to protect it. So too does the sea cucumber. Most animals don't want to eat them. They're too tough and rubbery, although people eat them. Delicacy. People eat everything, right? So delicacy in a lot of Asian countries, these are boiled up. People do eat them. I tried it once when I was in Indonesia. There's a delicacy there, and it was polite for me to try, and I tried it. It's actually quite tasty with all the flavours they cook it with, but very chewy still. Not my cup of tea, but still you got to try things, right? So the sea cucumber, delicacy in other countries. And they're worth a lot of money. In some countries, they can pay like $90 a kilo for that really attractive, appetizing-looking creature. But look, more to show you. So we've looked at a few echinoderms. Okay, so animals with tough skin, some way or another, an outer coating that protects them. Really tough skin. So the sea cucumber, sea star, sea urchin. But that's some of the first creatures that ever lived in the oceans. So the first animals on Earth were simple echinoderms. But I do have another simple creature, another invertebrate, so no bones inside. It does have a shell on its body to protect it at times. So if you look at all the shells I have on the table here, I can lift a couple up. It's a shot. These are big tropical sea snails. So we know sea snails are from the sea, of course, and the biggest snails in the world are sea snails. Okay, giant clams, they're also related to snails. So bivalves, bio meaning two shells. So think of a giant clam, a mussel, a scallop, a pippy. These are also like snails in the way. They're mollusks. So we call these creatures that make shells mollusks. Snails are mollusks. We call a gastropod. And that just means a stomach foot. Okay, gastro means stomach, pod means foot. So if you're a gastropod, you're a stomach in a shell with a foot that comes out, basically. Okay, so a snail is a gastropod. But Not very romantic, is it, when you put it like that? But I want to show you a cool snail with a really fascinating name. It's called an elephant snail. You may have heard of them. And the reason they're called an elephant snail I found really interesting when it was explained to me. An elephant snail is called an elephant snail because its shell, there's one there, a shell that I found washed up on the beach, is in fact the shape of an elephant's toenail. I can see it, right? Yeah, you get me? Okay, so the elephant snail shell is a very flat and simple shell, okay? And the snail can't fit in that shell. Let me show you the snail now. I have one here. It's stuck in this other shell. Okay, so that there is the elephant snail. Okay, that black part is in fact the snail, its body. And you can see how it can't fit in the shell. I mean, its shell is just too small. So what this snail will do to protect itself, instead of hiding in its shell, it'll go under a rock. It'll go right up under a rock, and you can see the shape of the shell, really handy for doing that. It can fit right up underneath a rock, stick on with its foot, one big foot for sticking, so it doesn't get washed away. And in fact, where these snails are commonly found, there are a lot of big waves that will crash into the rocks, and these snails are specialists in living in a really rough and volatile environment like that. Those rocky reefs that we see big waves crashing into, these snails are stuck up underneath the rocks, hanging on for dear life. It's what they do best. So it's stuck in this shell now. It won't come out unless I give it a little push. I might be able to get it out to show you a little bit more clearly. It's really cool. But it's sort of stuck there, and all you're sliding it off. It's perfectly going to work out nicely for me there. Slide it off, and you can see its foot. Okay, so that is the snail's foot. Big muscle there. And that huge big muscle is what it will use to stick to the rocks. That's it. So really simple creature, but fascinating. And all the long parts coming out. See those long bits there? That's its face, okay? And the long bits are called its tentacles or antennae. Has no eyes. The snail doesn't need eyes to see things. It lives under a rock. A lot of its life doesn't need to see stuff. So it just feels its way around, you imagine, with the antennae. Yeah? With them coming right out now. It's also got a hole right there above the antenna. I don't know if you can see it. I'm trying to see on my screen, but there's a little hole right at the front of it there. You might see it. And that is its bottom. Again, with the bottom. Okay, so have a close look there. We like looking at bottom sometimes. Well, that's the elephant snail's bottom right there. Okay, and basically things are different in the sea. Okay, what can I say? So having a bottom there on the front of the top of its head, it's able to defecate, poo, and just floats away into the sea. Okay, so its bottom's right at the front. But you can really see it now. There it is there. It's coming right out. What a cool snail. These snails are herbivores, so eating plants. And we know plants grow in the sea. You think of seaweed. Basically, seaweed is algae, which is like a plant, and that's what they eat. They love to eat sea lettuce. Not all snails eat sea lettuce or seaweeds, because most sea snails are carnivores, which I found really interesting. So they eat meat. You know, carnivores eat meat. So a sea snail like this one was a carnivore, and I know it was a carnivore because of the groove in its shell. The groove in the shell is where a snail like this, a sea snail, would shoot out its proboscis, which is like a spear, or they can make it like a drill to drill through shells or shoot fish. Yeah. So carnivorous snails have a groove in their shell, whereas a herbivorous snail, a plant-eating snail, will have a perfectly round shell. Like this one here, which is abalone, that perfectly round shape, like a salad bowl. That's how I was taught. A good way to remember. So like a salad bowl, it eats plants. The elephant snail, we know that is a herbivore, perfectly round shell, no groove in that shell for a proboscis, drill or spear. So that is a herbivorous snail, unlike most other sea snails, which are carnivores. Cool, hey? Something that I found really interesting about snails in the sea, that they're mostly carnivores. We know garden snails, ones we have, you know, are usually, or always, except for a very rare couple, are herbivores. Yeah. But what else have we got in the tank? I'm trying to keep my time here too. I don't run out of time. I'm trying to leave time for questions. Heaps more to show you. So, a relative of a snail. This one you might be surprised, so you might know your classification of animals here. So we're looking at mollusks. So snails are a mollusk, soft, squishy body. Some of them got shells in their body. You know, we talked about the snails, the bivalves. We've got, you know, things like slugs as well. But what about a mollusk with 8 wriggling arms? Okay, gave it away. 8 arms. Octopus. All right, now the picture behind me on this side, I'm looking at my screen, which is reversed, sorry. So the octopus here is the blue ring. Yeah, you've heard of the blue ringed octopus, pretty famous or infamous. So the blue ringed octopus is actually one of the most venomous animals on Earth. They've got a tetrodotoxin, so a toxin that basically shuts down your nervous system. Pretty intense. But they're not aggressive creatures. I've got one to show you in a little tank. And it's safely tucked away just in here so we can look at it safely and easily. I might just put it on the edge and just adjust my camera a little bit so we can see it. There you go. Yeah, it's in the tube. So blue rings are small octopus. They don't get very big. They're very common along our shorelines all around Australia with a few different species. This one is the southern species that I find quite commonly in rock pools. And I tell people, when you're in the rock pools, don't ever be worried about them because they're not aggressive creatures. There's only ever been 2 incidents of people being bitten by blue rings that we know of here in Australia. They can kill you though. So if you get bitten by a blue ring octopus, you want to get to hospital really quickly. If you get to hospital, you'll be fine. Life support, you'll be fine. You can get basically life support, keep you alive, and you'll be home at the end of the day. Not too many issues, but it's what's important to know CPR and do your first aid as well. So if you're at the beach with people, you can help them out if it happens. But very rare because they're not aggressive creatures. They're very shy. Right now it's in the tube. I'm going to wake it up. But look, I'll be really careful. I'm definitely not going to touch it. So the only way you'd ever get bitten is if you were trying to handle a blue ringed octopus, which you would never do. You can watch them and observe them, and they will leave you alone. They're blue rings they rely on to warn other animals. Those blue rings are a great way for them to flash, get attention, and say, hey, I am a blue ringed octopus. Watch out. Most animals are aware that animals that have bright, flashing colours are dangerous, okay? So venomous creatures often have bright colours. Now, let me see if I can get it out. Let me use my gloved hand. Why not? And I'll just tip the tube, just sleeping in there, and it should slowly come out. I might use my snorkel just to gently poke him out. Let's have a look. Or her. Not too sure, but I believe it's a female because it's a bit bigger than the males that I've seen. This is actually a pretty big octopus, to be honest. They don't get giant. Blue rings are quite small. This is quite a large one. Wow, there she is. Now, I'm going to try and hold her up for a closer look so you can see the blue rings if you can. So as she wakes up a little, there we go, you might see those blue rings if I bring it up a bit closer for you. I don't know if you can make them out there. It's not the best sometimes working with tanks and reflections and things, but the blue rings, if you can make them out, are a deterrent. Now, these animals, as I was saying, you wouldn't have to worry about it in a rock pool. They're usually hiding during the day under rocks and even in empty shells. So I often tell people, if you're at the beach having a good time, jump in the rock pools, check them out, have a snorkel, but don't pick up rocks because there could be one underneath the rock you don't see. And don't pick up shells that are in water. It's really important to remember that shells are homes for animals, and the blue-ringed octopus is one animal that's often using a shell as a home. There was a story about a dad collecting shells at the beach with his kids and putting shells in his pocket. A blue ring crawled out into his pocket. So he was fine, didn't bite him, but something to be wary of. The shells at the beach, if they're in the water, they're habitats for animals, snails, crabs, and the blue-ringed octopus. Love to squeeze into small little places. As you probably know, octopus have no bones. We talked about mollusks. It's a mollusk with no bones at all, so they can squeeze into small spaces. So it's always important just to make sure when you're at the beach, exploring rock pools, you can see what you're touching, and you know what you're touching is safe, and then you're fine. Not a problem at all. Often go to the beach with my kids, and I love them to explore the rock pools and not be worried about animals like these, but be wary, always be careful, of course. Now, they don't live long. The longest living octopus is about 6 years, the giant Pacific octopus. Blue rings are smaller. They only live for about 12 to 18 months, and that's it. And that's just the life cycle of an octopus. You've probably seen that cool documentary. If you haven't, it's a good one to check out, which is called My Octopus Teacher. Really cool one, about a man that spent, I think, about a year every day diving and getting to know an octopus. And it was sad at the end, obviously, the octopus died. Yeah, it's just their life cycle. So they just do not live very long. This little one, I'm not sure how old it is. I've only had it for a few months, so it could well be that it's at the end of its life cycle. It's just hard to really know. But what an awesome animal. They are something out of this world. I mean, an octopus has 8 arms, we know that, 3 hearts, yeah, and 9 brains. Crazy. I'm lucky to use my 1 brain a lot of the time, right? But the octopus has got 9 brains. think of it this way: they have a very complicated nervous system. So in every tentacle, they have an arm. In every tentacle, they have a brain in every arm, and then a central brain. So 9 brains in a way. Really clever creature. It allows them to move around at night with their tentacles touching things and communicating with their main brain exactly what they're touching. So it's like they can see in the dark as they move around by just feeling things. Really clever creatures, as you've probably heard, the octopus. But look, I'm going to put the tube back in for her, and she might be able to hide while I put her aside and show you another animal. But you can see she's not aggressive at all. She's not trying to get at me or trying to hurt me. I mean, they're not an aggressive animal. They rely on those blue rings as a way of warding off predators. But plenty more to look at. So thank you, little Bluey. I'll pop you over there. And I want to show you something else. So we've got other animals that do have bones to show you. So we've looked at all the invertebrates, although the next one's an invertebrate bones. So bones are on the outside, so not inside. Like we think of a vertebrate animal, they're like us with bones inside. I want to show you an animal with bones on the outside, and I've got an example of some here. Pretty cool claw. We can guess what that's from. A crab, right? So this is real. It's actually from a king crab. And the king crabs are the second biggest crabs in the world, and we get them in the deep seas of Victoria, of Tasmania, and Victoria. This is from a 6-kilo crab, and they get up to 20 kilos. Crazy. I mean, that's a small claw. They can be massive. I mean, imagine that one pinching your toes. You won't have to worry about them at the beach. They live in the deep sea, okay? So 50, 100 meters, way down, okay? But I don't have a king crab to show you, but I have a big Port Phillip Bay spider crab. So the spider crab, I'll just adjust this, excuse me, is, well, the biggest crab we get in Port Phillip Bay, and the Japanese spider crab is the biggest crab in the world. You may have heard of them, the deep seas of Japan. They're very similar to the Port Phillip Bay spider crab in the way they look. I'm going to grab it. It's in a tank I just got off to the side here, and I'm going to bring it over. I just didn't want to have it here on the table. I didn't have enough room for it. So one moment, I'm going to run over and introduce you to Spidey the spider crab. All right, so I'm just trying to adjust here as you get a balance there. There we go. So this is a Port Phillip Bay spider crab. And isn't she beautiful? I know it's a girl. I'll explain why when I can pick her up. Well, you might be able to see here underneath of a crab, they have their abdomen. Let me see if I can show you. Whoa. All right, come on, Spidey. That abdomen there, that rounded shape. A male has a small V shape, whereas she has a big rounded shape to hold onto her eggs. So we know it's a female. You can tell it's a spider crab. They've always got these crazy long legs. And her claws. I mean, she has those sharp chellae. They call them chellae, just like on any crab, except they're not overly powerful. She's not really trying to pinch me, you can see. They're not a really pinchy crab. They're really cool, though. Pop it back in. Because these crabs are like the gardeners of Port Phillip Bay, moving around the bay, digging into the sand, aerating the sand, grooming the kelp forests and the grass beds, eating it up, keeping the ecosystem working really well. There's thousands and thousands and thousands, or if not billions, of these crabs in Port Phillip Bay. And every year, this time of year actually, when the water gets cooler, they're known to migrate into shallow water to peel off their old bones. Yeah, so their exoskeletons peel off as they grow. They get a new exoskeleton underneath. And when they first peel their exoskeleton, there you go, it's quite soft. So they're vulnerable to predators. And they know this. So by getting together in shallow waters in big numbers, they ensure that they have time for their exoskeletons to harden with a lesser chance they're going to be eaten by predators. Although the predators do know this is happening, and it's a big feeding frenzy. Rays and birds and sharks will actually come and feast on the freshly molted spider crabs. So if you're a snorkeler and you don't mind the cold, there's certain places you can go around Port Phillip Bay at this time of year when the crabs are migrating and actually experience something which is, it's a world phenomenon. And I know that David Attenborough, the famous, the David Attenborough, he, his documentaries, came here to Melbourne, Port Phillip Bay, to document the spider crabs. It's in his Ocean series. If you've seen the Ocean series, the footage of spider crabs was actually filmed here in Port Phillip Bay. This is one of those crabs. We've got some videos on YouTube if you want to check them out. There's one where I went diving with the spider crabs myself and had some footage of them all. It's amazing. It's amazing. And even footage of one peeling out of its old bones. It's pretty crazy. With the spider crab, a crustacean, right? So the other crustacean I had, it's hiding. It's just under here. You may have seen it moving around the tank. Probably more familiar. Crap little. He just said that. Oh, he's coming out. So this is a hermit crab, right? So the hermit crab, being a bit smaller, a bit shy, as you can see, it uses a shell to protect itself, of course. Okay. Now they don't grow the shell. We talked about snails growing shells. So any shell you find at the beach was once a snail or mollusk, and then the crabs just move in. Basically, they use these old shells for their homes. When the shell gets small, the crab will move out and find a bigger shell. That's probably aware. So this is a little red-legged hermit crab with the red hairy legs. Love how it pops in and out. Gives me a fright too. But yeah, those red hairy legs, they use to feel through the sand to find food. So they're scavengers. So crabs eat anything, everything. And I mentioned these spider crabs like the gardeners of the sea in Port Phillip Bay. So are all crabs, really. They're moving about, picking up leftovers, any dead animals sink to the bottom, the crabs come and clean them up. So really important little critters, crabs, crustaceans. But there's more. So I might pop the spider crab back in its bigger tank just off to the side here so it's more comfortable and show you some other animals. Cool. But the spider crab, what a ripper. And just a reminder, any questions, if you're thinking of things you want to ask me as I'm rambling on here, just maybe jot it down and you can chuck them into the to the comments. I've just noticed there's some comments coming through. I'll get to them at the end. We'll have time. Jake's going to let us go into some cool people. I'm just glancing now. Wow. Cool. So I'll pop it to the side. Spider crabs. Awesome. Just remember to check out our YouTube video if you want to see more about spider crabs or even, like I said, David Attenborough's Ocean series. Amazing footage. Okay, I'm back. So the next creature is another animal with bones, but not an exoskeleton like the crustaceans have. So this has actually got an endoskeleton, so a skeleton inside like us, so a true vertebrate creature, a vertebrate marine animal. It's a fish. Okay, so fish are vertebrates, and I've got a little fish I want to introduce you to that I think you'll know. He's pretty well known, especially if you go fishing around the pier. It's my little buddy Puff. My little buddy Puff. Here he is. This is little Puff. So here he is, little Puff. Little pufferfish. So the pufferfish, I'll try and move, get a better view for you guys, sorry. I'm just realising it's all opposites here on my screen. Better see a bit better there. No, it looks better on the black. Little Puff is a globefish, pufferfish. So you'd be aware of them, they blow up. Their bodies are covered in spikes. I'm going to hold him up a bit closer for you. You'll see all the little lines across his body. They are his spikes that will stick out once he's puffed up. Now, I won't make him puff up. People often ask me to, but when he puffs up, he's basically stressed. He's feeling threatened, and he'll puff up only as a last resort to try and protect himself. And it uses a lot of energy. So I don't want to make him puff up. We're sort of mates now, so I don't want to mess with him. These little fish often get misunderstood. People fishing at piers will catch them and find, and I've seen people call them a pest, and actually, instead of putting them back in the water, let them die on the pier, which is really sad because they are a little native fish and they're really important to the ecosystem. They're great little critters. And yeah, if you're catching them at the pier, I guess you might be using the wrong bait, or you need to try and change your fishing techniques because, they're not a good one to eat. You could not eat a pufferfish. They're toxic to eat, so they can kill you. They're toxic. Definitely would never eat a pufferfish, but also not very appetizing. I mean, covered in spikes. Okay, and again, no animals really eat them because of that. If an animal was to swallow one before it puffed up, they can actually puff up inside an animal and kill them. So those spikes, when they stick out, while they're not poisonous, they can cause a lot of discomfort. And I guess if you were to ingest that, you're in big trouble. So most animals just leave them alone. He's only a little one. They get big. They'll grow about sort of this size. And once an adult this size puffs up, they puff up as big as a medicine ball, beach ball. Yeah, crazy big. I mean, I've seen them diving. and I, bumped them occasionally when we were diving with a big school of them one time, and I had one puff up next to me, and it was bigger and wider than me. It was massive. So they are quite cool creatures. Big eyes on him. You might have noticed his big eyes. Hey, little puff. Let's see if we can look at the camera. Big eyes help them to see at night, and in dark environments like down deeper in water and also underneath piers. So around structures where they can hide and feel safe, and in the dark, those big eyes help them to hunt and find food. They'll eat kind of anything. Again, they're a bit of a scavenger, but they're also opportunistic, and they'll eat little shrimp and other things, bits of seaweed and algae and stuff as well. Yeah, good on your puff. He's one of my favourites. I love him. Cute little fish. But more to look at. Another fish. This one you guess. This fish is actually a famous fish because of the way it looks. And again, named aptly because of the way it looks. I guess like pufferfish. It's a fish that looks like a horse. You know that one. Right, so the seahorse. I've got them here in a little tank. Now, I'm just going to try and position them for you to see. They're hard to spot in this tank at the minute because this tank's got a piece of seaweed in it. And these fish are masters of camouflage. So I'm going to try and position it with a lighter background. You might see them a bit better. I'll hold them up in a second once I take the seaweed out. Because once I take the seaweed out, they're going to let go of the seaweed. You're going to get a clearer view of them. So I just shake it a little bit so they let go. And their tails are like monkeys. In fact, yeah, their tails are prehensile, like a possum's tail, a monkey's tail. They're hanging on. So once that seaweed's out, you can see them a bit more clearly. I'll hold them up closer for you there. And beautiful pot-bellied seahorse. This species is the one we get in Port Phillip Bay. We get two species of seahorse in Port Phillip Bay. The short-headed seahorse and the pot-bellied seahorse. Pot-bellies have the big round tummies to hold on to basically eggs. So we probably know it's not the mum that has the babies in her pouch. It is the dad, right? So that's a male there, that one, swimming upside down. They're not the most graceful swimmers. That's his pouch, you can kind of see there. The female has a smaller tummy. She'll lay the eggs into his pouch. He can have 100, even up to 1,000 babies in his pouch. It's crazy, 1,000 babies. But he won't look after them. As soon as he lets them out of his pouch, the babies have to swim off on their own and survive. So they have 1,000 babies, but only 1% will survive. Not many. Now, at the minute, you can see they're struggling to find things to grab onto. Oh, he's grabbed onto her. They grab onto each other at times. So I'm going to put the seaweed back in, make it feel comfortable. They panic a bit when there's nothing to hold on to because living in the ocean, they just get swept away. They have really pathetic fins. You might have seen them there. Small little fins on the side, one little fin on the back. They're not good swimmers. In fact, they are the worst, they're slowest swimming fish in the sea. Not good at swimming. So the side fins are called pectoral fins. Pectorals on the side, dorsal on the back. So you might have seen it flapping a little. Hard to show you there with the reflection, I know, I'm sorry, but hopefully you can see them there now. They're back, trying to get into the seaweed and hide again. They feel much safer when there's somewhere to hide, or they're still holding each other. You can see them doing that. So those tails are instinctively always looking for something to grab onto. They're actually a tube mouth fish. Doesn't sound as exciting as a seahorse, but the tube mouth, you've probably noticed, long mouth, sucks up shrimp. They're a predator, ambush predator, hiding in the seaweed, little shrimp floats past, boom, they'll suck them up with that tube mouth. So they're really fast at sucking up shrimp, and their head is shaped like that so they can throw it forward to catch shrimp. So they're designed to quickly suck up a shrimp, but not swim quickly. They just hang on to seaweed, wait for the food to come to them. I have another fish to show you as well. So I'm going to keep it moving so we've got time for these questions, guys. So the next fish I have, I'll move my seahorse aside. I might even actually put them into their big tank. Just 1 second. It's just right next to me. And I have a fish you're going to get straight away when I tell you, big teeth. It's a shark. So I want to show you a little shark, of course. I mean, this was a jaw from a Mako shark. The Mako shark is a large pelagic mackerel shark related to the great white shark. This was a 3-meter Mako shark, right? And these sharp teeth are there for it to catch fish. So people talk about sharks being horrible creatures that want to eat people. I think the movies have a lot to answer for there, don't they? But they're just movies, all right? So sharks do not want to eat people. They want to eat fish. I mean, they've evolved to eat sea creatures. These sharp teeth catch fish. And without sharks in the ocean would be a very unhealthy place. Think of the sharks as like the regulators, you know, they're the top predator, the apex predator. They're like the lions of the ocean, okay? They chase the fish around, make the fish strong. If there were no sharks chasing the fish would get sick and lazy. The ocean wouldn't be a healthy place. I mean, the fish have evolved to swim quickly to get away from predators like sharks. Sharks have lived in our oceans for hundreds of millions of years. They've been around way before dinosaurs. I mean, I've got a tooth here from a shark you may be familiar with, and that is a real fossilized megalodon tooth, the largest predator that ever lived. And this tooth is only a sort of medium-sized tooth, but pretty cool to think where this tooth had been. And I was told it's estimated to be about 2.5 million years old. There you go. So I turned 40 the other week, and I'm thinking I'm old. So 2.5 million year old shark tooth. Pretty awesome. The megalodon. It's extinct now, of course. The shark I have today is a very primitive shark. Came out of this egg. So this is a shark's egg from a Port Jackson shark. Okay, so the Port Jackson shark came out of that hole. This egg is quite an interesting design because it looks like seaweed, and that allows a shark to be safe in this egg for up to 12 months as it grows. Long time to be growing in an egg, so the egg has to be very well protected. Has to protect you very well, sorry. So when you're in the ocean, you look like seaweed, and also it's really rubbery. Okay, really rubbery. When it gets washed around, bumping into rocks in strong currents and waves, it will not break. Okay, so this one's empty. Okay, the shark hatched out of here about a year ago. Let me show you this little shark. It's just in the tank next to me. I'm going to lift it over and pop it here. You can have a look at it. Here we go. Put that just there. It should balance there. So this is a little Port Jackson shark. Completely harmless. And what's interesting to know, out of the around 450 different species of shark, there are only around 5 or 6 that are dangerous to humans. So most sharks are harmless. This little shark could grow around 5 foot long, 5 to 6 maybe, completely harmless. Never bite a person unless you stick your finger in its mouth, then it might bite you. Otherwise, they just sleep on the bottom of the sea. Very docile little sharks. I see them often when I'm diving, and you can go right up to them, have a close look, and they don't mind you at all. So this one is not a pelagic fish. Pelagic meaning open ocean, swimming around all the time swimming. Great white sharks, you know, the Mako sharks and others have to always be swimming around, so they're pelagic, open water sharks. This one is a benthic or bottom feeder, like most sharks actually live like this one, on the bottom of the sea, cruising around, just eating leftovers, things on the bottom they might find, hunting in the reef and around the shoreline, the rocks and crevices for food. He'll eat anything comes across, really, but anything meat. Doesn't eat any seaweed or algae, only eats other animals. Leftover things, you know. It'll even eat sea urchins. We talked about the sea urchin with those spikes. We saw it. This animal is one that's specialised in eating sea urchins. They've got a really unique jaw system to crush up really hard things. The Port Jackson shark, almost like a little vacuum cleaner for the sea. Really cool shark. You might be able to notice its gills moving on the side. Breathing. Okay, so this shark is one of those sharks that can actually pump water through its own gills. Big pelagic sharks, great whites, they can't do it. They've always got to be moving to be breathing, whereas this shark can sit still and breathe, no worries. And what's interesting also, sharks have no hard bones. So the only true hard bones inside a shark, or hard part, are the teeth. Their skeleton is cartilage. Stingrays and sharks are cartilaginous fish. So when they die, the only thing that's left behind, eventually when they decay, are the teeth, like the megalodon. But cool, I better wrap it up because we've got a few minutes for questions. If we go over 5 minutes, I'm fine with that. I hope everyone else is. So I might open it up, Jake, to you guys. And if you've got any questions you have for me, I'll do my best to answer. I know I can see them in the chat there, so I might be able to I might leave them there and I can try and read them from here. I've got here, do they wee? From Fleur. I'm not sure which you're referring to, but yes, all these animals, anything that eating has to have a byproduct, so they defecate and wee. They do. Yep. So the ocean's full of fish wee.
Awesome. So I have a couple questions. One of the questions was, how many animals do you have in your aquarium?
In the aquarium, it does change a lot, and there's things in there that I don't even see that are hiding under rocks. But I reckon there's probably an estimated actual animals in there, probably between 50 and 100 different animals. I actually have these small sea stars called Brittle Stars that have been breeding in that tank. If I was to count all of those, it could be hundreds because they're teeny tiny little sea stars all through the tank. But sharks, I've only got one hatched at the moment. I've got 3 others about to hatch, 1 blue ring, probably 20 of the bigger animals.
What made you want to work with sea animals?
Oh, look, I think just love the ocean. Always love the ocean. Going on holidays to the beach with my parents down in Phillip Island, just fell in love with the ocean, snorkeling, and yeah, just I've always been fascinated with the ocean. So it's just one of my obsessions.
What's the most dangerous animal in the water?
Oh, it's a tricky one. The blue ring is the most venomous. I mean, the blue ring is definitely the most venomous, most dangerous animal in the water. I mean, you can't go past a great white shark, really, can you? They're very infamous, but again, very low risk. I mean, you got more chance being hurt in a car, driving around than you would be being attacked by a great white shark or anything. But definitely, great white sharks can't go past there.
Sal is asking, are the clear jellyfish we see on the beach dangerous?
Not really. The ones we have here in Melbourne, we don't have big box jellies in that. Down here, the Urchins and the blue bottles. Very rarely we get blue bottles. They're the smaller ones. The big ones you're seeing, no, they're pretty harmless. I think I remember they can cause mild skin irritation. So maybe like a little bit of itchy rash or something, a bit of numbness. But no, they're not going to sting you like the Urchins box jellyfish you get up north.
Chantel is asking, can you keep bad sea stars as pets instead of chucking them in the bin?
Well, they're very difficult to keep. You have to have a circulated aquarium system, a cold water aquarium system like I have here, and they're quite elaborate to set up and to maintain. So for the sake of keeping them as a pet, it wouldn't be very viable. I don't think it would really work. It does sound a little cruel, doesn't it, putting them in the bin, but unfortunately, if you were to leave them and they were to multiply into the bay, as they do, they actually wipe out and kill and eat a lot of the native species that haven't been able to deal with them being there. So it's one of those things. I don't think you could, and you definitely would not be allowed to keep one as a pet because they are an introduced pest species. I know for me to collect them, I had to write a letter to fisheries to get special permission to be able to take them from the bay and then keep them.
Michelle is asking, how long and big can sharks get?
That's a good question, Michelle. Well, we know that the whale shark is the largest fish in the sea, the largest cartilaginous fish in the sea. I think they get to like 15 meters long. I might have to just double check my facts on that, but they get big. I mean, the whale shark is the biggest fish in the sea. The great white shark would be the largest predatory shark or predatory fish, excluding whales. So the great white shark can get, I think, to 6 meters long. What I found fascinating about sharks, I'll throw this one in there, they're the oldest living vertebrate animals on Earth. So the Iceland shark or Greenland shark lives deep in the seas of Iceland or Greenland. They can live for up to 450 years. It's crazy. 450-year-old animal.
Renee asks, what is the least dangerous and most dangerous animal in the water?
Oh, it's a very tricky one to really answer that. The least dangerous, there's many that are not dangerous at all. I mean, sea star's completely harmless. I mean, the sea star, completely harmless. They're not going to hurt you. The most dangerous, again, the blue ring, they have really toxic venom. There are also types of cone snails, which are extremely venomous, but they're in more northern waters. And the great white shark, I guess. But again, not to worry too much about them. I would hope that people aren't deterred from going in the water worrying about what might be dangerous, because you can't live your life worrying about things like that. You've got to enjoy life. And I know I'm in the ocean nearly every day, and I'm still here. Okay. So don't let those things worry you too much.
Katie asked, have you ever swam with a whale shark?
I haven't, Katie. It's on my list. It's on my bucket list. Things to do. Definitely want to go. I was supposed to go last year to WA, where you can swim with them over in WA, Western Australia. But with everything happening with COVID, I wasn't able to go. But it's definitely on my list of things to do. It'd be amazing to swim with whale sharks.
Has asks, how long is the shark tooth?
How long is that shark tooth?
Sorry, how old? Sorry.
How old? Yeah, well, I was told by the person that was estimated, I think they estimate these things, I don't know how they do it, but 2.5 million years old. 2.5 million years. I mean, the Megalodon went extinct around, 2.5, 3 million years ago. They went extinct. So, yeah, it'd be about that old. Crazy.
Karen asks, is it possible that megalodons still exist in the deepest parts of our ocean?
I don't think so, no. I mean, I'm not an expert, but I would think not. Yeah, I think they're such a big predatory fish, and they, from what I understand, they don't just stay deep. They would have been coming up, so we would have seen them. You probably might have seen that movie, The Meg. I have seen that movie. Fun movie, but I don't think they're there anymore.
Cooper asked, what depth do the sea cucumbers live at?
Well, that's a good question. Well, the species I had with me here, I find them at 3 meters, 2 to 3 meters. But then I do know I have seen them as deep as I've dived, which is I've dived to 30 meters before, and I have seen them there at that depth as well. But I do believe there are probably even other species that are even deeper again. So I know, for example, echinoderms, which is what they are, type of echinoderm, live in some of the deepest parts of the sea. So the Mariana Trench, has a lot of sea stars, sea urchins, crustaceans, and possibly sea cucumbers that would be living at the deepest depths of the sea.
Fiona asks, is the Port Jackson shark endangered?
No, not anymore. They were protected in Port Phillip Bay, and I think they still are protected in Port Phillip Bay from people catching them when you're fishing. And that's because their population is very important to manage the sea urchins. And also they don't breed or lay eggs until they get quite a bit older. I think they have to be like 10, 15, 20 years old before they lay eggs. So for that reason, they are protected in Port Phillip Bay, but I don't believe they're endangered at all. No, I think they're very common. I often see them. They're a very common shark to encounter, but they are protected.
Janelle asked, do you have any clownfish in your aquarium?
Oh, don't you know? No, I do not. I only keep temperate water or cold water creatures like the animals we find here along our coastline. So I don't have any of the tropical species such as the clownfish. Beautiful little fish though.
Awesome. Narelle asks, what do catfish eat?
Catfish. Cat food? No, I'm joking. Catfish, I believe, catfish have those long whiskers. I'm not too knowledgeable with catfish, but I'm pretty sure they eat mud and like small animals in the mud. So they're sort of swimming around the bottom, sort of feeding on things like maybe shrimp and other animals that live in the mud or in around reeds and things. Because I think they live in very dirty water, and that's why they have those whiskers. So they're a predator too, I believe. Yeah.
Fiona asked, how did you catch and collect all these sea creatures?
So I have a license with fisheries that lets me collect certain number of species every year. And some years I don't have to collect anything if I've collected them before and I've still got them here. So I basically just go snorkeling or diving, to chuck on the scuba tank, get in the water. There's a few places that I go. I've got a little boat that I can go out and find a few little spots that I know I'm going to find certain things. And I just have to swim around until I find them. So the blue-ringed octopus is a fun one because they come out at night. So I often have to go diving at night. So that sometimes can be a little bit spooky, sort of in the dark, swimming around the bottom at night, looking for blue-ringed octopus.
Natalie asked, how many types of crabs are there?
Oh, Natalie, I don't know. I couldn't give you a figure on that. I'd have to do some research to find out how many species of crabs there are. I would guess there'd be hundreds. but I don't know for sure. I'll have to check that one out, Natalie. I'll have to look that one up. I'll do the Google.
Another question was, with the pufferfish having their eyes that help them see in the dark, does that mean they're a nocturnal creature?
Yeah, interesting. I think predominantly they are more active at night. When I'm diving at night, I often see them swimming around a lot more. But then having said that, I do see them swimming around during the day too. So I just think that some of the places they live, like in the deep water, maybe under piers, around like sort of the kelp forests and such, they just have bigger eyes to help them find their food. But I do think they are able to be more active at night as well as during the day. Because I see them doing both. I sometimes have actually seen them sleeping at night too. I'll find them sleeping under a rock or under some seaweed. So I think they're a bit of both, day and night, but having big eyes gives them that option.
Joanne asked, what is the rarest fish in the world?
Oh, Joanne, I'm trying to think. I don't know the rarest fish in the world. I'm going to look that one up too, Joanne. I'm not sure. I couldn't give you a name. I know that, some fish species are endangered and protected, but I'm trying to think of that. And I think of shark. I think like grey nose sharks are critically endangered now in Australia. I'm not sure. I would have to check it out.
Rob asked, what's your favourite place to dive in Port Phillip Bay?
Rob, yeah. It's a hard one. Anywhere. It's all awesome. And new places really excite me. So diving somewhere that I haven't dived before, I find that it's probably my favourite thing to do is find an area and think, what could be there, and go and explore that area. But having said that, some of the most beautiful dives I've had are, Mornington Pier is a stunning one. Mornington Pier is really beautiful diving. Good old Rye Pier. I dive Rye Pier a lot. That's a great place to dive. That's where I see a lot of the spider crabs. And even at the heads. So at the heads of Port Phillip Bay, where it gets really deep, there's some really amazing dives in the heads there. But again, it's a very dangerous area to dive. You want to be with a dive boat. Usually, when I've dived there, I've got with a dive company that will take me out to those reefs so that I know that it's safe. But the heads is amazing, where it drops off to 100 meters.
Leanne asked, what is the most unusual behaviour of a sea creature that you've witnessed?
Unusual behaviour. Yeah, I've seen octopus do some funny stuff. I had an octopus punch me in the chest one day, or didn't punch me, flicked me in the chest one day. But that wasn't funny behaviour. It was probably telling me to go away. I was getting too close, and it rolled out its tentacle and flicked me in the chest with its tentacle, and then swam away. I had a seal once when I was at night diving. I had my torch, and I'm swimming along the bottom with a torch looking for octopus. And in fact, it's a cool story. It's sort of quite unusual behaviour, I suppose. It was the torch. Every time these sand octopus would move around the sand, and when I lit a sand octopus up, I think I was going to get my container. I was going to collect this sand octopus to bring back. And as the torch shined on it, a seal swam over my head and grabbed it and swam off. It scared the daylights out of me because it just come over out of nowhere in the dark and took this octopus. A big burst of sand went everywhere. I was like, oh my God, what was that? Anyway, I realised it was a little seal, it was a young seal. Anyway, he kept following me. So he was using my torchlight to help him find octopus. So as I kept swimming along, every time I found an octopus, I figured it out after that first one. Don't shine the torch on the octopus. So once I saw an octopus, I wouldn't shine the torch on it. I'd sort of keep the torch pointing somewhere else. And in the corner of my eye, I was able to watch the octopus try and then collect it before the seal come and stole it. So that was pretty crazy. And the seal used my torch. I was probably stealing his dinner, actually, the way he saw it. But yeah, he was using my torchlight to help him catch octopus.
All right, well, thank you for joining us tonight. That was really, really good.
Thanks, Jacob. No worries at all. Thanks for having me on.
Awesome. And thank you to everyone else for joining us tonight. Keep an eye out for Scouts Victoria's social channels for any upcoming Scouts quests. If you have any amazing ideas for future Scouts quests, please email marketing@scoutsvictoria.com.au or comment here on the chat. Have a great night. Thank you.